Hi everyone, Stjepan here. In today's daily chess test, you have to attack like a grandmaster, and I have two positions for you in which attacking ideas and winning ideas are going to be hard to find, but if you do, the calculation is not going to be hard. There aren't that many variations. Okay, the first game is by Badur Jobava's brother, Beglar Jobava, who isn't the strongest Badur, but he's still a remarkable attacking player. Okay, pause the video. It's white to play, as you can see on the screen. Set it up over a real board. Time yourself. You have 15 minutes. Don't move the pieces. Write your analysis down. Find the most precise continuation. Okay, pause the video. See you in a minute, guys. Good luck. Okay, this position is better for white. Why? Let's have a look at the most important features. Well, the most important thing is the king safety. Once you have complicated positions with still a lot of pieces on the board, if one king is open and the other is not, then that should be your first signal that something weird is going on or that it may be a critical position. In this case, white's king is perfectly safe, guarded by, well, arguably two bishops, because this one could easily cover the king, two pawns and the rook, and nothing could ever happen to this king. The black king, on the other hand, is extremely unsafe, and that's the first most important thing. The second thing and the third thing are black's lack of development and white's pawn on d7. Now, these two things, when combined, mean that black basically cannot move his queenside stuff. His knight is unable to move because it would, well, stop attacking the d7 pawn, and if the knight cannot move, then the rook cannot move. More importantly, this pawn is very annoying, and well, it's sort of a thorn in black's position and makes his pieces unable to move freely. Also, white may be threatening to queen. So, what can white do to exploit all of this? Well, in positions like this, where you have dynamic advantages, obviously statically black is a pawn up, and if white does nothing for 5 moves, black is going to take the pawn with the bishop, play knight c6, play something like bishop f5, restricting your king, move the knight away, play c5, play rook to d8, and black is going to be a pawn up in a basically winning endgame. However, white's dynamic advantages can be exploited straight away. Now, first I'm going to show you what was played in the game, which is still much better for white, but not cleanly winning. Beglar Jobava played the move bishop to b5. Now, this move makes some sense because it threatens to, well, it defends this pawn, disables the knight from moving freely, and basically threatens to bring the other rook into the game via e1 and threaten the bishop. And in the game, his opponent blundered with knight takes d7, and rook h to e1 was played, and black was simply winning c6. White was simply winning c6, bishop takes c6, rook a c8 played, rook takes bishop on e6, rook f6, and bishop to c3. And in this position, black resigned. If rook takes e6, then bishop takes d7, and obviously white is winning. However, after bishop to b5, there was a much better move to keep black in the game. Still, white would be better, but c6 would have given black some practical chances. Okay, attacks the bishop, rook h1. This was white's idea, cb5. Rook takes e6, and knight takes d7. And of course, white is better. White has the more active pieces. g5 is hanging. The rook is great on e6. So something like bishop takes g5 and knight c5. And yeah, white is better. But we need something more precise. Okay, how can we get all of our pieces into play with tempo? I'm going to show you the correct way to play this, because there aren't really many more variations white could go for. One thing I would like to mention is that if you try to open up the h-file with the move h4, then of course black doesn't have to react to this. If black plays g4, then of course you are winning and you can continue the correct attacking idea I'm about to show you. However, after h4, black is given time to take this pawn, and now after h takes g5, white is still better, but black has managed to sort out the biggest problems in his position. Excuse me. Another important variation I would like to point out is bishop to b4, which after rook d8 again is much better for white. If you continue with something like rook e1 and bishop to f7 and bishop to b5, you defend your pawn. However, black again has a chance to survive. Now, let's look at the deadly move, the quiet deadly move, which should have been played in the game, which actually ends the game on the spot. And hopefully you did find this. It's not very hard to see, but the important thing is to notice that 2 or 3 moves down the road, black will be just unable to defend and unable to move a single piece. The winning idea is rook to e1. Okay, with this move, you're threatening to take the bishop, so black has to do something about it. Black can either take on a2, take on d7, play bishop f7, play king f7. Those are basically his options. What you are introducing with this move is the ability to move this bishop into play with tempo if the bishop on e6 should relinquish the g8, a2 diagonal. So, the critical variation is bishop takes d7, of course, and that plays into white's hand. If bishop f7, staying on the diagonal, then I hope you saw this, bishop h3, defending your pawn, connecting your rooks, and basically winning outright. There is nothing black can do from this position. If he tries rook to d8, then bishop takes g5, attacking the rook, rook takes d7, and bishop takes d7, and of course, game over. After rook e1, if king f7 is played, then bishop takes g5 again, and let's say knight takes pawn on d7, and now rook takes e6. This is a simple combination, which surely you saw. Bishop h3 check, king to d6 and rook d1, and you are winning your material and then some. And if bishop takes on a2, again staying on the diagonal, then again bishop to h3, defending the pawn. Knight c6, black tries to develop, and bishop to g5, preventing the rooks from coming into play, and again completely winning. Black can try knight d4, trying to establish the knight on e2, but you can prevent that with rook e3, and now at least your rook is in play. Let's say c5, defending the knight, bishop e7, and eventually either this pawn is going to queen, or immediately you can just win the exchange. You could have chosen to do so straight away. So, now for the critical variation, which makes most sense actually. Bishop takes d7. After bishop takes d7, all of your pieces come into play. And it was important to recognize that getting this guy into play is going to be the hardest thing to do, but you can do it with the pawn maneuver h4, and you will basically give black no defensive options. Okay, the bishop has moved, so let's gain time. Bishop c4 check, king to g7, bishop to c3 check. Doesn't matter where the king goes. If it goes to h6, you can just blast the position open with h4. If he takes, then it's mate in 2 or 3 moves. If g4, then rook e7, and again it's going to be mate in a couple of moves. For example, bishop f5, bishop g7 check, king to h5, bishop takes f8, and yeah, bishop f7 is coming. So after bishop c3, let's say king to g6, and now rook to e7, and now we reach the position which should have been your dream position when you started looking at this. Black is unable to move. You move the knight, you lose the bishop. You have nowhere sensible to move your rook, and white is simply threatening h4, h5, and easily mating. So let's try some defensive options. If rook to f6 is played, the engine gives this as the best move, then simply h4. You can never play g4 because of h5, and you are about to be mated. If g4, then h5 check, king to g5, and bishop to d2 check, and that's about it. And if g takes h4, then rook takes h4, and again, it's going to be mate in a couple of moves. Black can give up the bishop, but you don't even have to take there, just bishop to d3. For example, bishop f5 and bishop f5, king f5, rook f4 check, and you're winning everything. So rook f6 doesn't work. If he tries bishop f5, defending his bishop, trying to move the knight away, then simply g4, and again, there isn't much you can do. If you take on g4, then h4. Now this diagonal is open, the h file is about to open up. He doesn't have the option to play g4 anymore, so g takes h4, bishop d3 check, king h5, rook h7, and you can see where this is going. King to g5, rook g7 check, and yeah, eventually you will play rook g1 and just win everything. Another try is b5, trying to dislodge your bishop. Again, you don't really have to react to this, just bishop to d3. If bishop f5 is tried, again g4. If he takes your bishop, it's a lovely checkmate. Bishop takes d3, h4, and no way to defend. For example, knight to c6, rook g7 check, king to h6, and g5 mate. So game over. So coming back to the starting position, you had to recognize you had to recognize three things. You had to get these bishops into play with tempo, you had to free up this diagonal, and you had to get the h1 rook into play with h4. That was the hardest part to see. I mean, this was just, at least for me, an extremely instructive attacking position from which I've learned a lot about initiative. I myself usually mess up positions like this because I play moves which are either too slow or imprecise, and rook e1 is just amazing. Very hard to see, but amazing. Okay, the next position is from a Finnish chess magazine, Suomen Schakki. I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. It's a study composed by Edvard Hallström, and it's white to play. I'm going to tell you that it's mate in 11. I mean, I did manage to solve this in a couple of minutes because I recognized the idea, because I'd solved a similar study before. Hopefully you will see it too. Okay, pause the video. Good luck with this one. Be precise. You are looking for the correct idea. Once you see it, the variations come easily. Okay, so there's a pin over here. So you have a discovered check. That much is clear. This bishop is hanging, that much is clear also. However, if you try to play normal moves, for example, rook c7 check trying to win the queen, king h7, rook takes c8, I don't know which rook, let's say this rook takes on c8 and queen takes b1, this is going to be a draw. And there is basically no way to make progress after king h8. Even though you have a queen for a rook virtually because this bishop is dreadful, there is no way to win because black has sort of created a fortress. Okay, if you play something like rook to d7, for example, then again it's going to be a draw because king h7, queen takes b1, king to g8, and again you will have no way to make progress. You can try queen b3, but the king just goes back. You cannot sacrifice on g7, that leads nowhere, just bishop takes g7, and yeah, now this is simply winning for black. If you take here, he takes with check, mates you in a couple of moves. Okay, other discovered checks don't really work either. If you try rook f6 check, king h7, queen takes b1, then black can simply play g6, and as soon as black plays g6, then bishop g7 is a great defense, and well, you're not going to be mating him. So the correct idea was to free up a checking diagonal before you go in for the discovered check. I mean, the opportunity to move this rook away isn't really going to go away if you can play a tempo move, a Zwischenzug, before you move the rook. And this idea is just incredible. And again, I saw it in a similar study, so I solved this one quickly, but I'm not sure how well I would have done with this one had I not known the idea previously. Okay, so what you want to do, you want to be able to check here and to check here. And the idea is, once you get those two checking diagonals, you can zigzag your queen into the position until it reaches the perfect square from which a checkmate is going to be unavoidable. How can you do that? How can you free up this diagonal with tempo? Well, there's basically only one way to do it, and that's rook to d8 check. Of course, if black plays king h7, then yeah, you take the queen, take the bishop, and it's going to be a simple win. So queen takes d8. Okay, and now rook f6 check. The king only has one square. The difference is that now after the king goes to h7, you take on b1 with check. Again, the king only has one square. And now you zigzag your queen. Queen b3 check, queen c2 check, queen c4 check, queen e4 check, and queen e6 check. And once the king gets to h7, this zigzag maneuver with the queen was easy to see if you understood the power of both diagonals. Now this is a forced mate because you can now take on h6 and, well, only one move, pawn takes, and now queen f7, checkmate. I thought this was a remarkable study. Again, once you recognize the power of both diagonals, and once you recognize that once your queen gets to e4, it's going to be a simple win, then yeah, it's easy to solve this. Let's have a look at it again. So zigzagging the queen until you get to e4, and then rook takes h6. Excuse me, not e4, e6, and mate on f7. Yeah, I hope you liked the two positions. Let me know what you think. Today I chose attacking positions because I was working on some attacking ideas yesterday. Hope you like them. Let me know what you think. Stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.